In the previous chapter, you would have understood how Java handles primitive types as arguments. So where we looked at pass by value. I hope you understood that concept. In this chapter, we will elaborate how pass by reference concept work in Java. That's primarily when you pass reference types as arguments to a Java method. There is a small difference between pass by value and pass by reference, and let us understand pass by reference here. So pass by reference is nothing but passing an object a reference to the calling method. So in order to understand this concept better, let us look at this particular code here. So let's look at this code snippet. So employee E1 is equal to new employee. So what do you understand by this? So it's a very simple mechanism, like where a new employee object is created in memory and a reference variable E1 is actually pointing to that particular employee object. So this is the basic concept. Now let us say we have E2 is equal to E1. Now what happens? We need to see that there are two reference variables here. E2 is another reference variable which is also pointing to the same object, which is employee. So in order to understand this better, let's illustrate this with a simple graphic. What happens when a new employee object is created? So we could say the employee object E is created in the heap. So this is my employee object. All right. So this is there. Okay. So let's say, so this is my heap memory. So let's take an example. This is the heap memory. Okay. Okay. And these variables, there is a variable called E1 of type employee, which is basically created, and this variable is actually pointing to this particular employee object. So this is a very important concept that we need to understand. And the moment you create another type of employee which is of E2, so another variable called E2 which is also of type employee, so E2 is a variable created and this is also pointing to the same employee object. So this is very much important, we need to understand. Let us look at the next statement. We see here reference is passed by value and not the actual object. Okay, so reference is passed by value and not the actual object. What do we mean by that? So a copy of this variable, so this is another variable. All right, so this is another variable, this is another variable. So there are two variables here pointing to the same object, and this is the concept we are trying to bring in here. So when we talk about the next thing here, so reference of this particular object. So here is that the reference variable is copied, but both variables are pointing to the same object. So whenever you call a method in Java and pass an object reference as an argument, what happens? A copy of that particular reference variable is passed. But when you're passing the copy of that reference variable, it is something similar to E2, right? So where both are pointing to the same object, and this is called as pass by reference, where it is not passing the actual object, instead it is passing the reference to that particular object. So with this we see a difference. So whenever we do modifications to the object's data, or in other words object's state inside the method, what we are doing, so when we say E1 dot some method is invoked or E2 dot some method is invoked, both are same because it is actually invoking the method on the employee object. Similarly, whenever you pass this particular reference type, any changes you do to that particular object reference will basically affect the object's state outside the method as well. And this is what is used by Java whenever reference type is passed to a method as an argument. So keep that in mind. Whenever you pass an object reference as an argument to a method, a copy of that reference type is basically passed, but both are pointing to the same object. So this is a very important concept which is known as pass by reference in Java. So to illustrate this, let us go ahead and look at our example. Okay, so let us continue with our example here. Okay, so I have now created a new modification to our discount manager apply discount method. Now what I'm passing is, in the previous demo we basically passed, so we passed the sales order amount value. So now we are directly passing the sales order object itself. So now if you look at this, so earlier we were passing the order amount and that was getting passed as value and it was not giving us the result that we wanted. So how do we fix this problem? So we will pass the sales order object itself. So when you are passing the sales order object, so you are passing the reference type. Getting it? So when you are passing the reference type, copy of the reference variable is being passed as an argument, and both the variables inside this method, say for example, you have a sales order reference object type here. So a reference to the sales order, and this is pointing to the sales order object. And when you pass to this particular method as an argument, you have a copy of that particular reference variable being created, and this copy actually points to the same sales order object. So this is very important, and based on this, sales order dot get order amount will give you the actual order amount of the respective sales order object, which is 1500 in this case, and we apply the same logic and we take the discounted amount. But one important thing, in order to reflect that particular amount in the actual sales order object, we also invoke sales order dot set order amount to the new order amount, which is the discounted order amount. So by doing this, what happens? We could see the output. So let us run this program and look at what output we basically get, and is it what we expected. Yoo-hoo! So we got what we wanted, right? So order number is the same, 1001, customer is John, and 1500 was the order amount. And when we applied the discount to this particular order, we are seeing the discounted order amount is 1350, and now you are seeing that the same is reflected even outside the respective method call. And this is the core concept of pass by reference we use in Java. So it's very important to understand this concept. So in the next chapter, we will also look at the concept of returning objects. So if I return an object, so how will you basically represent this, and how does that work in Java? So let's explore returning objects in Java. Stay tuned.